On your Thursday episode of Locked On Raptors, in the pooper for Cooper or a noble second round loss, what would you prefer? We get into that and many more questions drummed up by sickos in the mailbag coming up on today's show. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Thursday, July the 25th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. We've come to the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can follow all my work over on the Hell website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors, and of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server, a great community we got building around the show. More than 300 sickos just like you who listen to the podcast and want to talk about it and denounce my very good takes that you think are bad for some reason. Obviously, there's plenty of stuff going on in there. We're going to talk Olympic basketball. We're going to talk WNBA. We're going to talk video games. It's all going on. Come hang out. Free to join is the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Again, link in the description of the podcast. It's free to join. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcast. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend on the audio side of things. Much appreciated. You can also go to YouTube, subscribe to the Locked On Raptors YouTube channel, hit the notification bell button, and you'll get a push notification to your device every single time the show is about to premiere or go live, so you never miss a second. And today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, let's get to it. On today's show, bunch of mailbag questions came in from you, the listeners, in the Locked On Raptors Discord. Another reason to join the Discord. You get question priority when you drop them in the mailbag questions channel. And we're going to go through a few. We got a lot of them over the course of the last hour or so leading up to recording, and we're not going to get to them all today. But guess what? August looms, and there is not much to talk about in August. So we will run through those mailbag questions when the time is right throughout the next month or so. But let's get to it. Let's bring in our guest for today's show. It is our pal Jamar Hinds from Raptors Republic, the God of the Game recap. Are you going to be recapping some Canada basketball games here, Jamar, to get those recap fingers going again?
No, that's actually somebody else at Raptors Republic that does all of that. So I'm not doing any Canada basketball recaps. This is another kind of slow period for me with basketball. Even at work, I'm doing a lot of baseball at TSN. Yeah, I know. I'm like a fish out of water. It's like, what? So
cutting baseball highlights. I used to do that a little bit once in a while back in the day too, when I was working for the news. And not the most fun sitting there watching a random Mets game and picking out the best play from shortstop over the course of 9 innings.
I watched the White Sox 2 days in a row. Okay, so it's like it doesn't get any worse than that. So I'm kind of waiting. I'm kind of buying my time until the WNBA comes back. So anyway, let's talk basketball.
Let's talk basketball and not the Chicago White Sox. Go listen to Locked On White Sox if you want to do that. All right, let's dive in. We got mailbag questions galore. We got a really good one out of the gate, and we got one from someone who, he just clearly listens to the podcast, knows the ins and outs of my content planning brain, and it is, of course, a would you rather question. We love a would you rather question here. And this one is pretty fun. It comes from Mid-Range Assassin, I believe like the youngest member of the Discord who makes us feel old all the time. He asks, would you rather be guaranteed Cooper Flagg after the Raps have another horrible season in which Scottie and Quickley get injured and miss most of the year, and on top of that aren't 100% sure if Scottie and IQ are even the future, or be guaranteed a second-round Game 7 loss where Scottie and Quickley look like the guys of the future and RJ takes a defensive leap along with Mobo, Walter, Dick, and Shed looking really promising? There's a lot of parts to this would you rather. Ultimately, though, at the end of this second option, they look like they're maybe just one or two moves away from title contention. What do you got here? Are you a Cooper Flagg man? Are you just like, gotta tank, gotta be terrible to take Cooper Flagg? It's the only way. Of course, if it worked that you could be guaranteed Cooper Flagg, then everyone would tank to be the worst team in the league. But that's just not how it works, of course. Ask the Detroit Pistons about how tanking to the very bottom tends to work out. Jamar, what you got here? Would you rather they be really bad and get Cooper Flagg, or be pretty good, make the second round, and feel like there's promise with the guys they have in-house, even if there's still clearly a need for some sort of title contention achieving move down the line?
See, at the first part of your question, I was on the Cooper Flagg side, and then when you started reading all the caveats, I started to wince, especially with the whole, I don't want to pick the side where IQ and Scottie get injured, but
that sucks.
I was
bad.
I know, but
let's just take the injury part out of it. Let's just say they're bad this year and things go kind of wrong and the bench is terrible, and we can remove the injury contingency out to maybe make the scales a little more even.
I'll take the question as is.
Okay.
But when I think of unexpectedly making the second round and like making a real push for it, part of me, the first team that came to mind for me was the 2021 Atlanta Hawks, where they unexpectedly got to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they've looked absolutely nothing like it since. They've lost in the first round a couple times. This season, they didn't even make the playoffs, I think they were just in the play-in. I don't think.
They got destroyed. The play-in, Jamar.
They got destroyed. I remember they got destroyed by the Bulls. Kobe White had damn near 40 points.
So true highlight of the season, frankly. And I don't even know if I'm totally kidding, considering the Boston Celtics went on to walk to the championship. Maybe that play-in game was the highlight of the year.
For sustainability reasons, if you were to have one really bad season for whatever reason, because obviously something drastic has to happen for the Raptors to, be guaranteed to get Cooper Flagg, which is the purpose of this question. So if I could stomach a really bad season for sustainability reasons and get Cooper Flagg, and then let's go for it. And, they would hopefully have enough to, go on another Lowry-esque run of 9 straight playoffs or something or whatever it was for the Raptors. I could see that being more sustainable than a flash in the pan season, and then it's what happens from here. Because I've seen it a few times with some other teams as well, where it's you think they're on the run to something great, and then it's just oh, it was just that one season. So, and I know a lot of people have been wondering, hey, do the Raptors currently have enough in their core to win consistently, not just one season, but consistently? So I know I've always been try as hard as you can every single season, and it's not like they're not trying as hard. This question is framed where things happen out of their control for them to be as bad as they are. I can stomach one more. This is not the first time I've said this. I can stomach one more bad season if it guarantees sustainability. I'm pretty sure you're going to take the other side. So let's hear it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I am Captain Anti-Tank. I think tanking sucks. I think it's anti-competitive. It's not what we do sports for, and the quants.
But this is not tanking.
It is not tanking, I suppose. I'm also not here rooting for Scottie Barnes and Immanuel Quickley to miss most of the season with injury. That doesn't do anybody any good.
That may be
looking. And the part of this question is that they're not looking like they're guys of the future. If you're drafting Cooper Flagg onto a team with an overpaid, quote unquote, Quickley and Barnes going forward who aren't looking like dudes, then what is Cooper Flagg doing for you except putting up good numbers on a bad team? So, I am pretty firmly on the just go and have a really good season. And if Scottie Barnes and Immanuel Quickley are good enough and RJ Barrett are good enough to push you to a second round 7-game loss to whatever team you might play, Boston, Philly, New York, etc., I think that's great. Obviously you got to handle your offseason more effectively than some of these teams that make these surprise runs do, and, add to your team and not sort of get complacent and say, hey, we're good. We got everything set up here. And, there's certain machinations to that are challenging because the NBA isn't fun anymore as an armchair GM league because of the rules. But I just think all of the caveats here for the first option here with Cooper Flagg, they don't really compel me. Look, being guaranteed Cooper Flagg would be awesome. And I know that's the sort of way the question is framed, but that is also a phantasmic realm that doesn't exist because you can't be guaranteed anybody. You get a 14% chance if you're in the top 4 of the lottery odds to get Cooper Flagg. I think in a flattened lottery world and a draft that's going to be pretty deep and loaded, like the Raptors could make the second round, pick a 20th overall and still find a decent player. Probably not going to find Cooper Flagg, obviously, but I just think if Scottie Barnes and Quickley are looking the part, then the need for a Cooper Flagg becomes less obvious, and you can still go the trade route if you want to, with your really good cast of young guys, Mobo, Walter, Dick, and Shed, all looking very good. All of a sudden, you got guys to throw into trades to go make star upgrades to go get your Cooper Flagg, who's a little bit more ready to compete with Scottie Barnes, Immanuel Quickley, and maybe RJ Barrett. Maybe he's getting traded for that star guy too. So I think it's pretty clearly the second one, as much as the Cooper Flagg thing would be nice. And thankfully, we don't live in a world where any of these things are real. And this extreme hypothetical is just not going to be something we have to confront, because I think it would probably rip the fan base apart if this were the binary choice that we had going into the year.
Literally took the words out of my mouth. That's why I put my finger up. I was about to say this would totally rip Twitter apart.
Oh yeah, this would be the this would be keep versus convey, except 10,000 times worse. And no one needs that in their lives. The world's hell enough already. We're going to come back on the other side here, Jamar, and get into a few more mailbag questions, including who among the non-core 4 guys in the team is going to have the best on-off differential. We'll get into that and much more coming up in just a sec. Today's show is brought to you by our pals over at Game Time, the single best place to buy tickets for the sporting events, comedy shows, theater shows, concerts that you want to go to all summer long. I've used Game Time for most of my summer entertainment at this point. Blue Jays games, concerts, you name it. I have gone to them, and I've gone to them with tickets purchased on Game Time because it's just the best way to go buy tickets. You get last minute deals where you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. Maybe the Blue Jays got a game coming up. Look, they're not very good, but Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is hitting dongs all the time. You want to go watch Vlad? You want to buy tickets 2 hours before the game? You can do that. You're probably going to save yourself a whole bunch of cake. Of course, you get seat views, so you know exactly what you're going to see when you sit down in those seats before you ever enter the building. All in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout, and the lowest price guarantee, where Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find something cheaper in the same section and row for less somewhere else. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back out here with Jamar Hinds, the God of the Game recap, as we continue to go through a little off-season mailbag action. Just a heads up, on tomorrow's show, Oren Weisfeld is on the show, a future writer of a book about Canada basketball, a perfect correspondent to talk about the Olympic basketball tournaments from the men's and women's sides. We got that coming up on Friday as the men kick things off on Saturday against Greece. I think the women get rolling on Monday. So lots of very exciting stuff going on in the world of, the wonderful thing that is Olympic basketball. All right, let's get into it here, Jamar. Another mailbag question from Ben Chapman asking, who has the best on-court net rating next year outside of the 4 no-doubt starters among possible rotation players? I think this is a good question. If we go to last year, it's kind of muddy, obviously, because the Raptors were a disaster show of a team. But I guess Gary Trent Jr. was technically the guy in this who was the 5th best on-off rating guy among the starters for the Raptors after the fact, a plus 3.4 net rating. This might just be as simple as who plays the most with the starters, because that lineup is probably going to be the best lineup, but maybe there's a bench lineup that really cooks. Maybe they find some kind of Scottie plus bench unit that really goes to work. I don't know. It's tough to say, but what do you got here, Jamar, as your sort of number 5 guy when it comes to on-off differential, assuming Scottie Barnes, Immanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, and Jakob Poeltl will be 1 through 4 in some order?
I'm like torn between, because wasn't Grady Dick's on-off like bad last season?
It was disastrous. It was a minus 10.4 per 100 possessions. They were worse with Grady on the floor than off. It's real rookie stuff. You got to expect there's going to be some improvement there, but he'll still be a second-year player. So, yeah, I think it's an interesting one.
I'm just going to, and I don't really have a real reason, but I'm just going to randomly go Bruce Brown.
Okay, sure.
Because I feel like, yeah, he's going to be beneficial to the Raptors, I feel, at least to start the season. I still don't think he's going to finish the season with the Raptors, but until they maybe phase him out minutes wise a little bit to have Grady play more, because they should have Grady play more. I'm just gonna pick him to be that fifth guy in these lineups, whatever, would it be starting or closing games or leading second units. I just feel like Bruce Brown's versatile enough to be that type of guy to fit that mold.
Yeah, like I definitely think there's more in Bruce Brown than we saw last year. It was a misshapen, disaster, rudderless roster with no direction that was basically trying to lose games by the end. And he was kind of hurt. So I don't think what we saw from Bruce Brown during his half season with the Raptors was particularly representative of the player he is. That said, I also think the fit could be a little tricky in the Quickley, Barnes, Barrett, Poeltl quartet, just because the shooting is not lights out. Like, he can flirt with being league average-ish and be fine, but teams aren't going to care about him on defense. Like, they're just going to let him fire away. And I wonder if just sort of the geometry of those lineups is a little bit clunky. I do think my answer here is Grady Dick. I just think,
okay.
Yeah, he's going to play with the starters the most, I think. I think that starting lineup, that lineup was really good last season with Gary Trent Jr. in that fifth spot for, yes, only 10 games and like a couple hundred possessions. It's a very tiny sample, but plus 12 per 100 possessions is not nothing, I think, in that sample. And even if it's a little bit worse, I think that's going to be their just best lineup offensively, particularly. Defense will see. And the bench guys, I'm trying to think of like Bruce Brown. I don't know if he'll really work that well with the starters to really drive that lineup to be a huge sort of bellwether lineup for them. And the second units that he could be a part of, I think there are some interesting combinations, and there is a possibility here of like a Quickley and bench lineup that really works because you build it maybe around Quickley and Kelly Olynyk, or Quickley and Poeltl with Kelly Olynyk and a couple of bench guys in between. Maybe those lineups are really functional and drive, positive play. Scottie plus Brown plus Olynyk plus a couple shooters. That could be something interesting as well. We saw some inklings of a bench unit coming together with Scottie and 4 bench guys last season. I just ultimately think this team's going to win the bulk of the minutes that they win will come with the 4 core guys on the floor together. And I think Grady Dick is going to be the guy who plays the most time with them. And so even though he was a disaster in on-off last year, I think as a second-year player, a little bit more physically mature, playing with better players, I think that's going to be where they rack up the biggest plus minus. And I don't even know like if there's like a stealth candidate, right? Like Davion Mitchell, is he one?
I thought you were leaning towards Kelly Olynyk for a second.
I think the defense is just too rough with him. I think as much as he might boost the offense a bit when he's on the floor, I think the defense will just be kind of a mess. That said, like I've talked about this, and I'm curious what you think. The idea of Kelly closing games, being the 4 next to Poeltl, where you have Scottie, RJ, and Quickley 3-2-1. I think that lineup could have some juice. Maybe Kelly is the guy.
It wouldn't shock me to see that. Wouldn't shock me to see that lineup.
Yeah, so, it's big. Like, it's not great defensively, probably, but they're functionally large, which is something that most of the other core lineups the Raptors are going to have can't really claim. So I think that's maybe a stealth candidate. I don't see Davion Mitchell driving a ton of positive plus-minus play. I think he'll probably break even more or less as a bench guy. And beyond that, it's a whole lot of question marks and rookies who notably do not drive positive play. So I think just by process of elimination and just projecting who he's going to play with the most, I think Grady's the answer here. And maybe that's not a great thing for the hopes of this coming season. As excited as I am about what Grady Dick can be, year 2 is still, there's going to be plenty of greenness and growing pains that he's got to go through as well. To tie into the Bruce Brown thing, another question here from that Marfin, who's going to appear a couple times in this mailbag because he's got some good questions that came in. This one is, if the Raptors keep BB heading into the season, what lineups would most optimize his skill set? I have talked a little bit about this. I'm curious what you think. Is there sort of a construction that makes sense in your head as, ooh, that's the Bruce Brown lineup? What do you have in your mind there?
With his playmaking ability, I feel like he'd be best optimized with shooting around him. Mm-hmm. So possibly lineups where instead of Poeltl in the game, you have, because I know Olynyk really plays his best at a 4, but I'm pretty sure we're going to see some minutes with him at the 5. I feel like giving Bruce that kind of dual threat where he can has another driving lane instead of Poeltl being there, I think maybe that would optimize him a little bit more with Grady and Kelly, where he can kind of run a little bit of the point, but then also be a driving threat because there's shooters around him. I would say that's probably the best way he can be utilized. I don't know. I'm just kind of brainstorming off the top of my head, because I'm just thinking when he did his best in Denver, obviously he was surrounded by a lot of shooting, and that would be the Raptors' best shooting lineup, where it'd be like Quickley and Grady and Brown, and then Kelly at the 5, and then you could still have Scottie at the 4. That's fine, but I'm saying that that'd just be like your best shooting lineup to play make. That's just what I'm thinking off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think any lineup where Bruce Brown can operate something resembling as a short roll guy with a spacing big in the corner, probably Kelly Olynyk. I think that is the thing you want to shoot for here. I think just play Bruce Brown with Kelly Olynyk, have Bruce Brown screen and use him in the position that he has been super successful in a lot of stops around the NBA, as one of these sort of, non-traditional smaller guys who, because of his playmaking, because he has a bit of finish around the rim, is someone who really operates well as a short roll guy. I think for me, thinking of a lineup construction of Quickley, Grady, Dick, it gets tough on the wings because you're small, but maybe it's Quickley, Mitchell, Dick, Brown, Olynyk. Maybe that's too bench heavy. Maybe that's a lot of heavy lifting for Quickley to have to carry. Maybe you swap in Mitchell for Scottie Barnes or RJ Barrett. I think Quickley plus Olynyk plus Brown plus fill in 2 guys on the wings could be pretty fun. I think there's a lot there with the shooting you get from Olynyk, the creation you get at the point of attack from Quickley, and the short roll stuff. If they are going to sort of sell out, send 2 to the ball Quickley and be aggressive in their pick and roll coverage, all of a sudden you do those little slip passes and Bruce Brown has the world open to him to go and create from the middle. I think those will be the lineup constructions where he is at his best. There's not a ton of those lineups you can get to because they don't have a lot of wings to elongate these groups. Sucks. They should have more wings. But that's not what they've done this summer in terms of team building. So given the roster they have, I think that's probably the sort of best you can come up with is, and hey, you could do a pretty starter heavy look with Quickley, Barrett, Barnes, Brown, Olynyk. I think that could be pretty fun. That might be a little light on shooting, but I think Barrett, on sort of catch and shoot stationary threes seems like he's maybe a pretty reliable guy. Brown's not terrible. Scottie's not terrible. It's a lot of fine-ish shooters plus Quickley and Olynyk. Maybe that's the group. Maybe that lineup closes sometimes. Interesting. We're going to come back on the other side, Jamar, get into a couple more mailbag questions, including a very big what if in Raptors history as we, it's the summer. We're going to talk about the history stuff too, because we can only talk about the team that makes no sense on paper so much. We'll come back on the other side and round it out with a few more mailbag questions. Rounding things out here on your mailbag episode on a Thursday, a reminder, Locked On Sports Today 24/7 is our all-day streaming channel covering all the biggest stories in sports from the national angle and the local perspectives that only Locked On hosts can provide. It's a great thing. You just go to the YouTube channel, Locked On Sports 24/7. You put it on, and it's just there for you. And there's sports content. And it's not like the screamy, yelly sports content you get on the big networks. No, it's just good, smart analysis and interesting, fun, creative, and wonderful hosts. Go check them out. It's a wonderful thing. All right, Jamar, a few more questions to rattle through here. That Marfin, we're going to continue his heater here with some good questions. This one, it's a pretty fun would you rather, I suppose. If the Raptors could add 5% more to a shooting percentage from last season, which would benefit the team more? 5% on Scottie catch and shoot threes, or 5% to Immanuel Quickley's finishing and floater game? This is a pretty fun one. I had the numbers pulled up. I lost the numbers, but generally, Scottie Barnes was not a very good pull-up shooter at all last season. He was an okay guy on catch and shoots, sort of mid to high 30s. If you could add 5% to that or 5% to the Quickley floater and interior game, what are you taking?
Well, I mean, just simple math, 3 is more than 2. So if I'm picking something, I'd pick Scottie to be a more of a 3-point threat than Quickley to be more of a 2-point threat. And then also that would open up things more, because if Scottie is that much more of a threat from three. Teams have to pay attention to him more. Closeouts are going to be more reckless. That will open up other parts of the offense. So, yes, I would like to see Quickley finish a little bit better as well. But the things that can be opened up from Scottie being a better three-point shooter as opposed to Quickley being a better finisher, I think it's like not even close. That would open up a lot more if Scottie's a better three-point shooter. Not to say that he wasn't, but in that particular aspect, it could use some work.
That's interesting because I actually think I'd go the other way on this. Scottie last year shot 38.5% on catch and shoot threes. That's pretty good. And he did it on 4 attempts a game. It was the pull-ups that totally dragged down his percentage. He shot 17.5% on about 1 per game. The catch and shoot stuff, it was pretty stationary. It's not like he's, flying around screens and doing stuff off movement or anything like that, but you don't need that. I think if he goes into another season and shoots 38, 39% on catch and shoots on 4 or 5 attempts a game, that's going to draw the requisite number of closeouts from teams who have to start worrying about those catch and shoots to allow Scottie Barnes to do the thing where he makes closeouts into lunch and really, really damages opposing defenses by attacking them. I think with Quickley, he already shot very well at the rim for the Raptors last season. He shot 70% at the rim, not super high volume, but it was in the 88th percentile among all players in the stretch he played with the Raptors. So just 38 games. It's a tiny sample. We don't know what it totally means. But the short mid-range for him, normally a real area of strength. He shot 51% with the Knicks to start last year, 50% the season prior. Really took a step up from what he had been in his first couple of seasons. If he can get back up to there, he was only at 35% from the short mid-range. If Immanuel Quickley is giving you rim pressure and getting you paint touches where teams are worried about him scoring, that opens up a ton in terms of like laydowns for Jakob Poeltl, drive and kick stuff, just sort of warping the defense because, oh God, we can't let this guy get within 8 feet or he's going to destroy us. I think for the overall health of the offense, Quickley being a devastating rim scorer is not only, just going to kind of get the wheels of the offense moving a little bit more effectively, taking advantage of Scottie Barnes' ability to hit catch and shoots, that type of thing. I do think it also, it sort of, that's the jump for Quickley to go from pretty good player to, oh, this guy might be an all-star. And I think that is just like the slightly more important skill. Scottie Barnes shooting 39% again on 4. I would like to see maybe the sort of number of attempts go up from 4 to 5, 5.5, something like that. But if he shoots that again, and they can kind of cut out some of the pull-up stuff, or he can just be slightly better than 17.5% on his 1 pull-up a game, I think that 3-point clip is perfectly fine for Scottie Barnes. It's a respectable level. I don't know if you have a retort back to my retort.
Nope, that's a good point. I mean, it's cool to take opposing sides on this. So.
That's what podcasting's about, baby. It's button heads. It's disagreeing. We're good podcasters. All right, one more question here. This one comes from Duncan. And this is a good one. What's the bigger what if in Raptors history? If TMac stayed or if Kawhi stayed? I love this question. Jamar, I think we're not going to do sort of the what ifs of if they were healthy and stuff. We just take what their health sort of records were. Both of them obviously suffered injuries. Kawhi obviously more seriously and I would say of a more prolonged stretch than TMac, although TMac certainly had his health issues with the Rockets. What do you think here? What's your sort of bigger what if? Obviously, the 2019-20 season looks a lot different, even with the COVID stuff. If Kawhi is healthy, he was, of course, healthy in that bubble. You could argue the Raptors walk to the championship if Kawhi is still on that team. After that, it gets more interesting. The Vince TMac era, always going to be a big-time what if. What's your bigger what if here?
I'm going to go with the TMac what if because I feel like I know what would have happened if Kawhi had stayed. You already just brought it up. I feel like they would have repeated in the bubble. I feel like they would have been a better team than the Lakers who ended up winning in the bubble. And then I know Kawhi kind of broke down the seasons afterwards, but I feel like there's not a lot of question there because with Kawhi and especially with the Warriors breaking down after that finals with KD gone and stuff like that, I just feel the Raptors would have clearly been the best team in the league. The TMac thing is interesting to me because, that 2000 playoff run where they got swept by the Knicks, but you saw how well McGrady McGrady was arguably their best player in that series because Vince kind of really struggled, especially that first game. I think it was like 3 for 20 or something like that. But you saw like how they could be as a tandem as the season was going down the stretch. Like he was having crazy games, like 26 points, 6 assists, 7 blocks, things like that. Like he was really starting to come into his own. And then obviously you saw that in Orlando when he was most improved player. But regarding T-Mac and his injury history, he didn't really start breaking down until like 06 with the Rockets. It's like his second season in Houston when he really started to break down. So that would be like 5 more years of prime T-Mac, and him and Vince and an Eastern Conference that really wasn't that good. The Nets made the finals twice, and they were just barely scraping 50 wins. The Pistons were a 1 seed once where they, I think, had 50 wins on the dot. The East didn't really start getting respectable again until 04 when the Pacers won 61 games and them and the Pistons butted heads, and then Shaq went to Miami, and so I feel like there would just be less competition in the East. The Bucks kind of fell off. George Karl kind of ruined that team, and then there wasn't really another team that was kind of standing in your way. Philly had that one playoff run, and then they were kind of mediocre after that. I feel like the Raptors could have ruled the East for a couple of seasons at the very least if T-Mac had stayed. Now, would they have won the championship? I doubt it, because that was with Shaq and Kobe in their prime, and the Spurs, they were basically alternating championships for a little bit there. The T-Wolves were really good. The Mavs were really good. So the West was just stacked. But in terms of I just feel like that would have been a really cool what if. And then that would have probably totally eliminated the Chris Bosh era, because they wouldn't have been bad enough to get Chris Bosh in the first place. Yeah. So that'd be a total different era of Raptors basketball. But I feel like that would be a really cool what if, because I legitimately don't know. Like I could assume they'd be finals good enough, and that would have been really fun. I just feel like that's a bigger what if, because I for the unknown factor, whereas the Kawhi thing, I kind of know what would have happened. That's why it's so frustrating, because you kind of know what would have happened.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the T-Mac one is the bigger what if, because it's just way less certain. And that's not to say that the Raptors definitely would have won the bubble title. It was a weird season. Jimmy Butler was playing out of his damn mind, powered by Big Face Coffee. Who knows? But I do think they probably beat the Celtics in the second round, a series that they lost narrowly in 7 games anyway, with Pascal Siakam a shell of himself and Kyle Lowry just kind of putting the team on his back. By the way, we need to give Kyle Lowry more flowers for that series. Maybe the best series he ever played as a Raptor, and they lost. What a king.
Oh, hold on. Before you even get to that. Yeah, that game 6 against the Celtics, where the
Raptors best game as a Raptor, I reckon. Yep.
Yeah. Because I did a top 10 Lowry games like before he first came back the first time, and that was number 2 on my list. Obviously, number 1 was the game 6 where he started off on fire. But I think that was Lowry's most appreciated game, because everybody was talking about Lowry after that game. Embiid, Redick, Kevin Love, Dwayne Wade, Magic Johnson, everybody was tweeting about Kyle Lowry at that thing, because I mean, like, everybody was watching. That was during COVID, where there wasn't much else to watch. So I think he was that was probably his most respected game, globally in terms of NBA. Sure. I mean, obviously the Raptors remember him most for the game 6 start against the Warriors, but I think Lowry as a player was probably most appreciated in that particular game. Sorry to cut you off.
No, man, it's all good. I can talk about Kyle Lowry standout games all day long. It's my favorite thing to do. Maybe we'll do another episode on that this summer, because it's been like a year since I've done it. He's the best. Yeah, I think still they're probably prohibitive favorites to win the title in that 2019-20 season. But then it's really interesting to think about what happens after that, considering the injury stuff. I don't think they have the Tampa tank in full. Maybe COVID overwhelms them anyway, but they're probably in a better position before COVID takes over the team to, weather that and not completely fall out of the race like they did in Tampa, and, execute the Tampa tank. Scottie Barnes isn't a Raptor if Kawhi sticks around, and it is probably a bit of a shambles at this point in the timeline, considering the injury stuff and the expensiveness of the team. And Kyle aging out, that type of stuff. Like, it's the downside of if Kawhi stayed. I think pretty significant, even if you get 2 titles out of it. I think you probably take that and laugh, even though the bubble title is fake. Not as fake as the following year's title, but still a fake title. When it comes to the 2021 title, the year where the Hawks went to the conference finals, the actual fake.
I'm not asterisk culture. That's why I laughed, but whatever.
I'm not either, generally, but
sounds like you are. But
yeah, did you watch the 2021 season where everyone missed like 40 games and like the freaking Suns made the finals? Yeah, that was a weird year. Okay. Anyway, what am I saying?
They were a 2 seed. But,
and literally the only reason I call the bubble title fake is because the Lakers won it. If anybody else won it, very real title, very cool, very impressive. Actually, more real than any of the other titles. But the Lakers being
a Lakers hater, like a dedicated Lakers hater for life, I even have to roll my eyes at that. But yeah, go on.
Jamar likes the Lakers. Can you believe it? Unbelievable. Wow, quote it. Put it out there. It's the pull quote for the podcast.
Literally,
I'm sending it to our social
opposite.
Team. Yeah, we're going to stitch it together. Jamar loves the Lakers. Speaking of the Lakers, going back to the TMac thing, I do think the year that the Raptors maybe win, if you have Vince and TMac, is 03-04, where the Pistons take down the really rickety old Lakers at the very end of the Shaq and Kobe thing, where they hate each other. Gary Payton's old, Karl Malone's old and creepy and out of the lineup and all that. And yeah, I think that's the year where they maybe squeak out a title from the Vince T-Mac era. Otherwise, they're probably standard Eastern Conference food for the Lakers in the other finals. But that's the year I think that you circle.
That's interesting because that would probably be the toughest year to get out of the East.
Yeah,
because of the Pistons and the Pacers being so good. I would probably pick the year before that. I would say probably 03 is their best because the Lakers were not at their best that year. And yes, the Spurs were really good, but I feel like the Spurs were the one team that I thought that could have beat the Spurs was the Mavs, but then Dirk went down. So that kind of ruined that. But I feel like they could have been had. Like the Nets took them to 6 and it was very competitive. And I feel like the Raptors with T-Mac would be better than the Nets. So I think that would be the year. But because I think
that's a good one too. Yeah. That's you're probably not wrong there. Look, T-Mac should have stayed. Everyone knows this. And it gets more upsetting every time he's like in public. Yeah, I really should have stayed. That would have been tight, huh? Yeah, it would have been, man. Well, you should have stuck around. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much, Jamar. This was a lot of fun. Thanks to the listeners who sent in some wonderful mailbag questions. If we didn't get to your question that you sent in today, we will surely get to it as I work through the mailbag backlog throughout August, because guess what? The news cycle, pretty dead over the next month, barring a Tyus Jones signing or something like that. So we'll get to those mailbag questions. We got Canada basketball stuff, of course, to cover as well on the agenda. Jamar, anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
First of all, wasn't Tyus Jones considered like one of the best backup point guards in the league for a couple of seasons? It's kind of surprising that he's still unsigned. Anyway,
welcome to the new NBA, where role players are scum in the eyes of the owners and front offices, but and of the richer players and the players who set up the salary cap and everything. Yeah, it's great. The new CBA, really fun for everybody. We're having a great time over here.
Anyway, I have absolutely nothing new to write. I did mention my Kyle Lowry top 10 games. If you wanted to check that out in further context, my link to my Raptors Republic work is in my Twitter bio. You can follow me there at JamarBH, JamarBH. That's probably one of my best selling myself things because I really suck at this. But
me too, man. I'm very bad at it. It's the reason I'm less successful than a lot of other people is, I do stuff. Don't really promote it, but it's there somewhere if you want to find it. That's all right. The real heads know. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Jamar, for hanging out. We'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks. Those of you who are looking for more stuff, we got more stuff tomorrow. Locked On Raptors Team Canada edition, as we talk about the men's and women's tournaments, their pathways through their respective groups and fields in Paris 2024, ahead of the beginning of the Olympic men's basketball tournament on Saturday, with Canada taking on Greece, and then the women get rolling next week as well. We'll talk about that on the show as we progress as well. I'll be out a couple days for mini vacation next week for my anniversary, so we won't quite be real time talking about some of the games, but we will have a Canada-Greece recap on Monday, and then on Tuesday, we will be dropping our wonderful, long-awaited over-unders and props review episode, looking at who won the over-unders and props contest, both between myself, Vivek, and Sahal, and for you, the listeners, who made your submissions at the start of last season as well. The winner getting a pair of tickets to a game this coming season. Either way, thanks so much for hanging out. We will talk to you again on Friday, another episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye.